Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in today's video, it might be a little bit scuffed. I'm in the process of moving to my new apartment now. Not everything's unpacked or set up. I'm currently holding my mic in my hand because I don't have the arm, but I'm going to be putting out a long overdue video here, going through the Mythic Sanctum of Domination bosses from a tank's perspective, just running through the first 3 bosses in this video, and just kind of giving advice on how to handle certain tank mechanics, tips on boss positioning, as well as tricks you can do to make the fight easier, maybe squeeze out some DPS, and just get that kill for your group. I know there hasn't really been too many guides out there, so I figured I would go through it here. So that's going to be the Tarragrue first, Eye of the Jailer, and the 9. All these fights in general are pretty straightforward from a tank's perspective, which makes sense given that they're the first 3 bosses in the raid, but hopefully this video still helps you out regardless of if you got these bosses on farm already or if you haven't even started progressing them yet. With all that said, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you found this video useful, and let's start off with boss number 1 here. Got the Tarragrue. So starting off, there's not really too much to this boss. Your damage here doesn't matter. If you want to pick up those damage powers, you can go right ahead and do big damage, but the defensive powers are actually pretty good here. So the main thing for the tanks here, obviously you're taunting off at 1 stack, and you can taunt off mid-cast and you won't get the stack, so don't worry about it. But we had 1 tank assigned to soak purple and 1 tank assigned to soak orange. So purple is that magic damage taken increase, and orange is that stacking dot. Now there is a debuff cleansing power, and if either of your tanks gets that, it can make the orange debuff pretty trivial, because at this point the orange buff can get scary over the course of the fight as you get higher and higher stacks of that. Near the end of the fight, you're taking a bunch of ticking damage. So if you have that debuff cleanse, it can eliminate those stacks pretty easily. But honestly, it's not the end of the world. Just be prepared to use those defensives later on in the fight, even if you're not tanking. Purple debuff, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward. You're just kind of sitting it. You're not really taking much magic damage over this fight anyways, so it doesn't really matter too much there. Another good power just to keep track of is the stun and fear immunity power. In general, this just makes it so you don't have to worry about DPS positioning. I know you saw I got feared there trying to soak, but makes you just kind of completely ignore the DPS and not worry about getting feared or anything like that. And it means you can stand inside the chains, which is, it's pretty good to have a tank do that because it is a big burst of physical damage. The one thing I will say for this fight is that we never had tanks soak the physical damage soak. That's the gray soak. We always had anyone else in the raid just run into that soak and soak that up. Because again, the Tarragrue, he actually hits decently hard for a Mythic raid boss. Like, he hits harder than multiple bosses in this raid as the first boss. So you really don't want that physical damage amp on a tank. But overall, yeah, you just kind of blast this boss. Kiting, we can fast forward here and watch me die. Now, I don't remember if this is one where we mess it up, but basically, if you have arms warriors in the group, they're great. They can taunt with their parry up and tank it for 8 seconds in one spot. That can let your tanks reposition after a kite. This is when I get meleeed right away. No, okay, good. Didn't immediately die. Good for the video. Let's see, we have a warrior parry taunting here. I'm running away now when parry's starting to get low. I think we probably both taunted at the same time there, but basically you're just trying to kite around the room. See, good soul shape usage there. Soul shape is really good for that as well. But at some point the boss does get taunt immune, but overall you can have like 10 people die here. It's not the end of the world. You'll still get the boss down. Now let's move on from the Tarragrue here, and let's move over to Eye of the Jailer. Now this boss, also pretty straightforward. You're taunting at 1 stack of Deathlink here. It will radiate damage to the raid, but overall with 1 stack, it's almost nothing. You don't really notice it. Just have some sort of minor defensive up for yourself. See, I just have Barkskin up there, and that's just enough to make sure I don't take too much damage. But realistically, the tank damage in this phase is not very high. The Abductor here, we just have 1 tank pick it up. I believe he stays and he transcendences over there to keep the ad close to the boss for cleave. You could run it with you if you don't have a tank that can do that. and it'll just run back around towards you after you make your jump. And note here, I am Night Fae, but just for safety, I am just going around and using the chain. It is possible to Night Fae blink it, but it's not really worth the risk. Anything that makes it super easy, like Transcendence is a super easy to execute blink. Night Fae, there is some room for error, so you want to be careful with that. Intermission phase here, so we do the 18-2 strat, so I'm with the original 18. We go to this side with the ad that spawns, and we cleave down this eye. And on the other side, we just have one healer and the other tank. And he's just tanking the boss there, dropping puddles on the side, just basically trying to live. We get this eye down to, I believe 15% is what we get it down to here. And what you notice is I'm holding on to pretty much all of my defensives. I have literally everything up, and that's because the damage in this phase is ramping. I'm not a paladin, I don't have any way to reset my stacks here or anything like that, so I need to backload all of my defensive abilities here because I'm going to be taking a ton of damage, and as you see, I only have one healer here right now. And so one healer and a ton of damage intake with the high stacks of the dot here. And so you want to backload all your defenses. And you see I'm just going through them all now. So I've used pretty much everything now at this point except for Shard, which I just used. And now I have one more charge of Survival Instincts, but I'm okay. And I'll finish off with this Deathseeker Eye. If it wasn't low enough, we do have 2 DPS, ranged DPS, assigned to come over and help kill it. But at that point, the boss was low enough there that I didn't need to call for that. The other thing to note in this phase, again, is that when the boss is eye beaming, so just after this, he'll do his little beam, the boss isn't actually autoing. So if you're the aggro tank as a Guardian Druid, I'm actually fine to just switch cat form here and start hitting the boss because he's not going to melee me during this glare. So you don't have to worry about that. Just make sure you are shifted back in when the glare finishes. Aside from that, fight's pretty straightforward. I'll go through the intermission a little bit again here. So basically, the entire reasoning for backloading defensiveness is, again, there's 18 people there initially, so you really don't need to do anything because you've got 3 to 4 healers depending on your group composition, and so you're very, very safe. The other side, you've got 1 healer initially, but you also only have the beginning of the ramping dot damage, so you're not even in that much danger, but I'd recommend committing defensives early on if you're on the side that starts with 2, just to make sure you survive until you have your 4 healers. Because when you have your 4 healers, yes, your stacks are ramping up still, but no one else's stacks are ramping up on that side because they've all reset their stacks. And so you're the only person taking a bunch of damage, and you've got 4 healers there to help you out. So you don't need to commit as much as the other tank who only has 1 healer there when he's going through the higher stack count. And you'll probably be able to see here, I believe we'll probably call for range DPS, but again, everyone leaves. They just need to make sure that they're not cleaving each other with the mark, so when they leave, they have to wait until they get the new mark before they go in, so they don't annihilate that tank over there. But this is probably one where I'll call for, yeah, my focus macro not working, big. And you see here, this one's not going to get as close to dying as the other eye, so I will need to call for 2 range DPS here to swap. And you'll see them running over in a second here, I hope. Yeah, there they are. I do commit a Bear Convoke as well, just because I wanted to make sure this thing died, because it got very close. There we go. And then here, very straightforward. It's just pop Lust, and you nuke the boss. Again, if you have any way to reset stacks, you can do it in this phase. It's a different stacking debuff here, but anything to reset stacks, you can do it there. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward from a tank's perspective. And that leaves us with the 9. The 9, here we go. Don't be fooled by this fight. It's pretty much a single target fight. So you have these guys, but they're there for much less than 50% of the fight. A huge portion of that fight is just fighting the singular big guy. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now. But that's a huge portion of the fight. And so I go pure single target build here. You're losing out, of course, in this first phase a little bit, but it makes up for it for the damage gain in the second phase, in my opinion anyways. Really, really straightforward tank fight here. So Kira in this first phase is the one that has the tank debuff. 3 stacks is where we were usually swapping, but like the tank debuff is really not a big deal here. If you're mitigating later on, because there's not really much to use big defensives on this fight, honestly. There's just not a lot of tank damage. These bosses tickle, so you could easily take 5-6 stacks. There's no reason to, but you could easily take 5 or 6 stacks. The other thing here is just making sure those songs are kicked. So we were just tanks, we're saving kicks for the songs, and DPS we're dealing with other things. Just to make sure that raid damage is pretty low. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be slowly rotating around the room as those frosts debuffs get dropped closer and closer towards us. Tanks can also pretty easily soak that purple one as well, depending on positioning. Skyja, that's her name. Skyja, same deal with the tank debuff. Again, doesn't hit very hard, but the main thing is the actual debuff it puts, the healing reduction that it puts out. So things do get a little bit chaotic when the boss comes down, as you can tell. The main thing here, you really want to make sure you're saving big movement abilities for that bubble. So you saw we could have been a little bit faster, I think, getting out of that bubble. But anything like blinks or dashes, roll charges, your steed, all those things, and be prepared for the second bubble to come down after the first, because of that recall ability, right? So I think when are we going to see the next bubble? Let's fast forward a bit until we see the next bubble, and I'll show you guys, because it takes a long time. Depends on where you are in the rotation. As you can see, we're just kind of dropping these frost zones along the side of the room, slowly moving, waiting for a big bubble, please. Should be soon, I beg. There it is. Oh, there it was. Okay, so we have the bubble come up here. I stampeding to get us out of it quickly, and he actually provoked it as well. So he provoked it, and you know, Word of Recall is in 2 seconds here, so the bubble is going to come again. And so for this, I believe I blink. Yeah, I blink out of it and just try and get that boss out ASAP. He's going to cast his fragments in there, but we do get him out fairly quickly. And that's key, is like knowing that when that first bubble comes out, be prepared, get ready to move again for that Word of Recall second bubble, just so the boss isn't wasting too much time just standing in that damage reduction. But there we have it. Tank tips for the first 3 bosses in Mythic Sanctum of Domination. I will be putting out videos for the other bosses in this raid over the next couple of weeks, so if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to be notified when those other ones get posted. Otherwise, if you have any questions, drop a comment down below, or come check out my Twitch channel at Tactics. I'll do my best to answer. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.